Hey everybody, it is Kellen Nitro for Nitro Maniac TV's Wrestling Unlimited coming at you with another Nitro's take, and you knew I was going to tackle this one. Being such a fan of that original War Games match back in 1987, and just my affinity for the War Games match type in general, when I heard that AEW was dusting off the blood and guts concept that they had previously announced last year that got shelved due to COVID, and they were doing it again, I was like, man, I'm definitely shortlisting this for the channel. So anyway, this is my take, Nitro's take, on AEW Dynamite's Blood and Guts that took place on Cinco de Mayo 2021 from Daly's Place in Jacksonville, Florida. Let's run down the card with the undercard matches and the Blood and Guts match. Now, the format of the show, the first hour, the undercard matches were pre-taped, I think, prior to broadcast. So they may have recorded them the night before. They might have recorded them earlier in the night as well. And the Blood and Guts match went live during the second hour. So those in venue in Daly's Place were reacting to basically a video up on a Jumbotron of stuff that was shot earlier. And there were a couple of times, like during the tag four-way, where some people had, I guess, mentioned on Twitter and that stuff, that it was kind of freaky that Luchasaurus was reacting to the crowd as the crowd was reacting to them on a TV screen a little bit, with no action in the ring happening whatsoever. So kind of strange, kind of weird, but anyways, let's go through it and I'll give you my thoughts on it. And yeah, I was kind of psyched to see how this match would play out, just due to the fact that this was over a year in the making, and a substitution on the face side from the Elite to the Inner Circle, as the Elite have moved on with a different iteration, and now a heel faction. And the Pinnacle is now the brand new heel group, this new faction that MJF is spearheaded. So yeah, it's, game on at this point. Opening contest, tag team action with Kenny Omega, the AEW World Champion, and Michael Nakazawa taking on Jon Moxley and Eddie Kingston. This one ran 8 minutes and 2 seconds in a tag team contest. The finish of this thing was Omega walking out on Nakazawa, so Nakazawa takes Moxley's finisher, the Dirty Deeds, for the 1-2 freakout. It was kind of a meh opener, but it was basically to set up the angle that happened post-match. The Young Bucks distract Mox and Kingston as the Good Brothers hit the ring. Magic Killer as the Elite attack Mox and Kingston. And then a one-winged angel by Omega as he came back to the ring to Eddie Kingston to keep that feud hot. So again, yeah, kind of a meh opener, but it was kind of surprising to see this match actually on the undercard for this thing when it was announced as well, but kind of not surprising either, as they continued this storyline that is the aftermath of the exploding barbed wire death match at Revolution. Coming back from commercial, we have QT Marshall with The Factory, Aaron Solo, Nick Camarado, and Anthony Agogo. Three names that we've not mentioned on this channel before, but that is basically the nucleus of AEW Dark and AEW Dark Elevation. These are guys that have been racking up wins in matches over the past few months on Dark, during the pandemic, you name it, and now are part of this heel faction with QT Marshall, which is a split of the Nightmare Factory, basically. So you have heel students on the Factory side, and then the normal Nightmare Factory that still follow Cody and Dustin are basically guys that are face alignment, I guess. So it's kind of a war faction between students, or young lions, if you will. But anyway, QT Marshall representing the Factory, and representing the Nightmare Factory, stop me if you get confused, Cody Rhodes with Arn Anderson. So former friends and business partners finally go head to head. This one here went 12 minutes and 19 seconds, and lots of... It was a classic heel versus face match, very sports entertainment-esque. QT taking liberties with Arn on the outside, and Arn attacks QT, but Arn is sent from ringside before a commercial break, and then they come back. A small package attempt later on, and QT does the old Ric Flair jock spot, where he basically loses his jock, and QT makes an ass of himself. So fast forward to the finish of this match, Cody wins with a figure 4 after a respect attempt gets flipped off and QT taps out. So yeah, there was a crossroads by Cody, but only 2, and Cody stands up and QT stands up, and they kind of square off a little bit, and Cody extends his hand and then immediately goes to flip off QT and is able to corral QT into the figure four. And again, QT taps out, but Cody's busted open. I didn't catch where it happened during this match, but post-match was when Anthony Ogogo from the factory shows up and drops Cody and basically drapes the Union Jack, the British flag, over top of Cody Rhodes. So that might be a match for Double or Nothing. We'll have to wait and see, as next week Cody has an announcement regarding Double or Nothing. So could it be Ogogo versus Cody Rhodes in Ogogo's, I guess, first singles big name match? We'll have to wait and see. We then go upstairs, and Ethan Page and Scorpio Sky are in the bleachers quoting Batman Forever lines. Page gets over the pass between himself and Darby Allin. Darby then attacks the two on the balcony. It's quickly turned though, and then in the oh my god moment of the night, the actual oh my god moment of the night, Darby is thrown down the steps by Ethan Page. If you look at the bump, it's really, really ugly. So I question the logic of doing this angle on a show where there was another huge bump later on in the main event that we'll get to and we'll talk about off of the finish of the Blood and Guts match. But this here is Darby being Darby. I am hopeful that he didn't really get banged up going down the stairs there, because man, that looked brutal. That took the Zach Gowen thing from years ago and the Mick Foley thing from years ago and basically times it by 10. It was ugly. Next contest, Dr. Britt Baker with Rebel in her corner taking on Julia Hart. Now, Julia, not a member of the Hart family. This Julia Hart, no relation to the Harts from Calgary or whatever. This one's from Minneapolis. So a brutal swing blade early on by Britt Baker basically finishes it off and leads to the air raid crash into the lockjaw for the submission squash win in 1 minute and 29 seconds for Dr. Britt Baker. So again, showcasing Britt Baker. She is the #1 contender for a women's championship, and that's your female content for the show. A lot of people complaining that they didn't have enough female content on this program, but I have a feeling that they're going to make up for it next week. So stay tuned for that, because the card for next week is actually looking quite stacked as well. Video package plays. It is the Taz Technique segment, and this time it's on Christian Cage, as Christian and Taz have a beef right now. This was chef's kiss. Somebody quoted on Twitter as to say that this is the heel John Madden, basically, is Taz right now in these segments, and I'll have to agree. It was phenomenal. Then we go to a #1 contendership 4-way tag team match between the Varsity Blondes, Brian Pillman Jr., Griff Garrison, Jurassic Express, which is Luchasaurus, and Jungle Boy in this one, SCU, so Daniels and Kazarian, and the Acclaimed, Max Caster and Anthony Bowens. The winning team gets the #1 contendership and a chance at the Bucks next week on Dynamite. Max Caster's rap going to the ring was unreal. Some of the highlights of this was a big stack choke slam by Luchasaurus on the Blondes, a near 2 for Pillman on Jungle Boy with a huge flying clothesline, a roll up on Kazarian by Pillman, only nets 2. Pillman basically being showcased a lot in this match, and rightfully so. The documentary, the Dark Side of the Ring documentary, debuts, well, depending on when you watch this, later tonight, or it had debuted already for the pilot for this latest season of Dark Side of the Ring. So that's why they were doing some cross promotion as well. There was a couple of ads on the TNT feed for Dark Side of the Ring on Vice, and of course we get it up here on Crave as well. So Daniels hits the best moonsault ever on Brian Pillman Jr., and that's it. The runtime on this thing was 9 minutes and 12 seconds. So the winning team gets a tag title match next week on Dynamite. So it will be SCU versus the Bucks. Stipulation is this: either SCU wins the tag team titles, or if they lose, they split up as a tag team forever. They're done. So high stakes match next week on Dynamite, and like I said, next week's Dynamite is as stacked as this one. This was good. I think next week is going to be a good show too. because next week as well, we got the IWGP US title on the line. Blue Justice, Yuji Nagata taking on Jon Moxley for that IWGP US title. A great video with a lot of New Japan footage used and promos from both guys. So that's going to be a huge contest. We'll have to wait and see what happens off of that. Tony Schiavone is at cage side, and he is to announce the AEW heavyweight title contest for Double or Nothing. So Kenny Omega comes out. He hypes the crowd up for Blood and Guts, but he says he's a busy man of late, that he is not excited for Blood and Guts tonight at all, and he just wants to know who he's facing so he can leave, basically. So the announcement ends up being this. Next week, there is a title eliminator between the top two singles competitors for the AEW World Championship. It'll be Pac versus Orange Cassidy next week for the #1 contendership, and the winner faces Kenny Omega at Double or Nothing. And then Orange Cassidy comes out because Omega basically is mocking Orange Cassidy even being in this match. He's overlooking him, thinking that it's going to be a rematch of that awesome singles match from last year on Dynamite at Double or Nothing between Pac and Omega. So the promo itself went a little long, but it got the point across at least. I'm thinking they're leaning Cassidy Omega for Double or Nothing because it'd be a fresh match, and it takes the hottest wrestler of the fall, going against their world champion, basically, and seeing what happens. Now, does Kenny lose the belt in that scenario? I don't think so, but stranger things have happened. So I think that definitely next week, I don't see Pac walking out with the #1 contendership. I'd be surprised if they do. I think it's going to be Orange Cassidy and Kenny Omega. And right now, with me saying that, I can imagine all the pro cornet marks and those of that ilk, kind of their heads exploding at the thought of that being on pay-per-view. So, and not in a good way, but let's move on. Miro hits cage side and says that he is going for the TNT title. He has a contract signed versus Darby Allin, and he says he doesn't care if Allin can't participate after the tumble down the stairs earlier tonight. He thinks that the contest is going to go on regardless. So what happened? Oh, I think what was the line? The line was, what happens when the man who can't be killed ends up facing the man who will kill him. So that's going to be a fun contest to watch next week. It's a real stacked rundown, and then we get into the main event. The match that I have titled on a rundown, Blood and Guts 1, Pinnacle versus Inner Circle 5v5. Now, flipping back to Wikipedia for a second, and I'm just going to read this here. The rules for Blood and Guts, this iteration of War Games, are based on a classic War Games format from Jim Crockett Promotions and not the modern WWE format. The notable format differences between the classic Crockett rules and the modern WWE rules are an enclosed cage with a roof, which was removed in modern versions, which is, that's the WWE, NXT WWE War Games two-ring setup it's just a cage, no roof. And the match can only be won with a submission or a surrender, like the classic Crockett format. A pin situation is not a win condition, and they actually mocked that in this match with Dax Hardwood going for a pinfall early on with Sammy Guevara and his team, the Pinnacle, screaming, "Hey, no, you can't win like that here." So I don't know if he had watched the wrong tapes or something, maybe, whatever. Dead Presidents look for the Inner Circle, and Dax and Sammy Guevara, as promised, start the 5-minute one-on-one period. Phenomenal 5-minute period. Probably one of the best 5-minute periods I've ever seen in these matches between these two guys. These guys absolutely tore it down. It concludes with an amazing springboard into a cutter by Sammy, and then Shawn Spears is the next in. He just bludgeons Guevara, but Sammy fights back until the chairman strikes with a chair. Ortiz is in next for the Inner Circle. House of Fire at that point. Mid-rope Spanish Fly by Guevara on Spears. Holy Jesus, that was huge. Guevara tries another high spot but crashes and burns. Looks like he's hurt himself legit there. Yeah, I think he slipped on the ropes and kind of went crumpled and face first, which was kind of a nasty spill. Between his spill and Darby's toss down the stairs tonight, there were some real sick bumps being taken by these guys. These guys were absolutely just on kill, just psyched, and it's kind of like, whoa, all right, This is just weekly TV here. This isn't the pay-per-view. Just calm down, boys. That's about it. So the runtime for this thing is 33 minutes and 58 seconds. We're going to fast forward now to the very end of the match. We come back from commercial. Prior to the commercial, the Inner Circle are in control of the match. This is the quote-unquote match beyond period that they renamed the All-Out Assault to not get in trouble with WWE's lawyers. So we go to commercial and we come back, and MJF and Jericho have escaped as Blanchard stole the keys from Remsburg into picture-in-picture, and Jericho slammed Blanchard into the cage right after, because he had opened up the door to hand MJF something, and all hell broke loose on the outside. So they are on top of the cage. Cage has a roof on it. Walls of Jericho on top of the cage, but low blow by MJF. Reverses the salt of the earth, and that reverses to the salt of the earth armbar, which doesn't get MJF a submission at all. But MJF smokes Jericho with the Dynamite Diamond Ring, and Jericho is busted open at that point. And MJF then takes a lifeless Jericho basically to the edge of the cage and threatens to throw Jericho from the top of the cage onto the stage. Guevara has made his way to the outside, and he and MJF, of course, had that feud going on prior to this, and he is the one that surrenders to MJF. He says, okay, look, it's not worth that. Look, we surrender. We're done. That's it. It's game over. Even though the Inner Circle had the advantage at that point in the match, with the exception of the exchange between MJF and Jericho, this was the ending, which I had no issue with this ending at all. It's what happened after that I kind of have a little bit of an issue with. The post-match, MJF pushes Jericho through the ramp, just tosses him off of the ramp into the stage, and the stage kind of buckles, and you could see the boxes and the padding that they had underneath the quote-unquote steel grating that Jericho went through on the stage. So again, these are two straight specialty matches that have kind of had a slight hiccup, or I guess hokiness to the finish of each. And those are just kind of, this isn't as huge of a stumble as the death match was, but it still kind of had that little real goofiness to it that I don't know, just kind of made you feel like, okay, something's off with that. I know what I'm supposed to be seeing, and I know what I'm supposed to be feeling here, but I don't feel that because of this reason. So, but again, great war game style match to start this as kind of like the big faction warfare, I guess, battleground was awesome. I still don't understand why this couldn't have been part of the Double or Nothing pay-per-view in a few weeks. I think that this could have been something similar to like the Stadium Stampede that was last year, unless they're planning to go one-on-one MJF and Jericho now at this point. But this will be a pretty unrealistic, almost WWE-esque recovery for Jericho. So this is why I'm kind of thinking more it'll be along the lines of Guevara versus MJF, if any warfare is to take place at Double or Nothing between the two sides in a singles match off of this. Not so much Jericho, but I think it would be more Guevara and MJF at Double or Nothing, which I don't have a problem with. That would be great. That should be a phenomenal match if it does go down. I'll give the entire show a 7 out of 10 with a definite must-watch on Blood and Guts. It was my favorite match of the entire night, obviously, and yeah, I thought they did it well. It was awesome to see the old school rule set get dusted off again one more time and thrown out there. Another War Games on Turner Network Television. Gotta love it. All right, folks, put your comments below. Later days, happy wrestling watching. Take care. I'm Kellen Nitro, and see you next time here on Nitromaniac TV's Wrestling Unlimited. And man, we didn't even get to talk about the other big news of the day here, so touch on that quickly. Dario Cueto showing up in MLW and starting up has found out that he is El Jefe now on the MLW side, and has that Aztec Underground, whether that's a faction or a brand new brand that Court Bauer's starting up. That's going to be fairly interesting to see too. That was going on at the same time as I think MLW goes head to head with the first hour of Dynamite, I want to say, I'm not sure. I don't have BN Sports, but of course MLW moving to Vice. Vice getting into the pro wrestling game with Dark Side of the Ring stuff. And now they're having their big premiere here coming up, and so on and so forth. And we'll recap at the end of the season, Dark Side of the Ring Season 3 here on the channel, and just kind of get my thoughts and maybe one of the other contributors to talk about this as well. So anyways, later days, happy wrestling watching. See ya, folks.